Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Death by. Today, we're going to have the show be a little bit different. Our format is changing because we're going to have a roundtable discussion about the breaking news about the adaptive and age group divisions having their own CrossFit Games. But before we get into the show, we want to thank our first ever sponsor of Death by, Thirdsy. I first used their PM Recovery Collagen after the CrossFit Games. I needed a lot of sleep to catch up on, and this stuff was a game changer. One of the biggest things that I like about their product is they don't have melatonin in it, which is something that I historically have stayed away from just because I didn't want to mess with my hormones. But this stuff is awesome. And we have a discount code for you if you want to go ahead and try Thirdsy. You will get 20% off of your order if you use code DEATHBY. We'll have a link in the description, as well as we'll keep putting that QR code on the screen for you. Now, on today's episode, we have a stacked lineup of guests. The Chief Executive Officer over at HWPO, Matt O'Keefe. Affiliate owner and CrossFit analyst Chase Ingram with Get With The Programming. Owner and head coach of Underdogs Athletics, Justin Kotler. And the 2008 CrossFit Games champion, 8-time Games athlete, and affiliate owner of NC Fit, Jason Khalipa, over there getting hyped. So, for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, big news coming out today. The adaptive division and the age groups, both teen and masters, will no longer be part of the individual CrossFit Games. The adaptive division will be run by WheelWOD in collaboration with CrossFit. Masters will be run by Legends, and the teens will be run by the Teen Pit Throwdown. More details for the entire 2024 CrossFit Games season, including schedule for each division championship and registration for the CrossFit Open. It will be announced at a later date, but let's just get into it. What are some of our initial thoughts? Chase, we'll start with you on this one.
Well, there's a lot to digest there, and I'm glad the announcement has finally come out. I think some people were joking earlier that this was the worst kept secret since the announcement to the Games moving to Fort Worth, but I am glad it's out in an official capacity because the whispers were there, the pit teen throwdown this year, and all the attention that was coming from the top brass to go watch their stream and to see if there could be a dedicated maybe teen competition in the next coming season. Then the question was, what are they going to do with the age groupers in the Masters division? And then especially the adaptive division. And when you look at this, I see HQ or the CrossFit Games team making an effort to try something new and to hopefully in a way that will improve this season. I think there's a lot of things we can talk about, which I'm sure we will over the next 30 minutes or so about this, but I see people trying to do something new in an effort to get more attention, more eyes, more dedicated resources as far as people and time to these divisions, of which everyone says they all deserve. Does that mean when they're partnered exactly with the Games team or the Games season all in one, do they get as much attention maybe if they are separate? So I am curious, obviously other people's opinions on the initial blush, but I see this as a initial step or intended step to make this better for all three of these divisions.
Mm-hmm. We'll just kind of go down the line here, and then I'll ask follow-up questions after we get through. Jason, initial thoughts here.
Oh, you guys jumped. Oh, that was just the order of the intro. Okay, I thought I was going last. All right. Well, so
he's doing bicep curls there still.
I was pumping some push-ups out, but now that I'm here, I think the major piece that yes, it's twofold for me. It's the ability to reach the potential for the specific demographic. I think that by having every group within one event, I don't believe that anyone is actually reaching their potential. That goes for the individual, the teams, the adaptive, and the age group, all of them, because by design, focus is not fully there from whoever is putting on the event. So in my opinion, I believe this will be really good for a bunch of reasons to reach potential, but mainly it's because oftentimes on the back end, it seems like some of the groups were not an afterthought, but not the focus. The focus of the games was primarily individuals, and then they would adjust those events for the different groups that were coming in. Now, instead of doing that, you could really focus on what is the best event for an adaptive athlete. Let's do that instead of, oh, well, these are the individual events and let's adjust them for the adaptive athletes. I think for that reason, it's going to help reach the potential of the audience and allow for better focus, and each group will win because of it.
Justin.
Yeah, I think in recent years we've seen that it's been a challenge for the CrossFit Games to have the bandwidth to really put on the masters teen adaptive events and make those athletes feel like they aren't, and I will say it, second class citizens. And I'm not sure that was the intention. I just think when you put on an event like the CrossFit Games, it's such a massive undertaking. And I think for the CrossFit Games to be able to focus now specifically on individuals and teams, and I still have thoughts about teams. I mean, I really believe ultimately that there should be dedicated team event as well. But we can talk about that afterwards. But I think the fact that the CrossFit Games can focus now on individuals and teams, and that you have these other events that can put their entire focus specifically on the divisions that they're focusing on, I think the potential is great. And I hope that right now the community is not looking at it like, oh man, we just got kicked to the curb, because I really don't think that it has to be that. I think ultimately that it can be better for each of those age groups and for the adaptive group. So hopefully that's the way people are looking at it. I understand both sides, but I really do believe that this makes a lot of sense.
Matt, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, honestly, these guys all hit the nail on the head. I think, you think of accessibility, that's at its core CrossFit, right? So, we have 10 people in each of these divisions that are coming, adaptive less 5, right? It immediately creates more opportunity. Yeah, I mean, I know this is a lightning rod, for a lot of people, but they have to ask themselves why. I mean, what Justin said about, sideshow, essentially, it is at the games right now, not focused, right? We want world-class events around anything we do. That's what CrossFit wants. To put these guys out on their own and highlight them, people might look at it as isolate them out of the system. It's not. They're supporting it. They're making a decision to do what they think is best to grow those aspects of the sport. So honestly, I think this is a long time coming. I think it feeds the masters, teen, and adaptive community for more people to participate, because there's more people that can actually accomplish their goal of getting to the CrossFit Games at a minimum. And the people that are going to run these events, I mean, I've worked with all of them in one way, shape, or form through our, my Loud and Live role, Wadapalooza. So they're all really good at what they do, and they're the best to be doing these events around these specific categories. So yeah, I mean, I know this is going to be something that, I think people at the top are going to be disappointed because they love being on that floor. But they got to ask themselves what sustainability looks like. This is a business really, I do this a lot, and I know it's really annoying, but look at other sports and show me a comparable here. And you can, like the marathoners and the triathletes, they do blend, but we want to get places and grow the sport and, create more accessibility and, more attraction. We've got to isolate these things. I agree with Justin. Like the question, begs the question at some point about teams. Like this is a really good, tough move, but it's a really good move.
So at this point, it's only been an hour since the news has officially been released. Just kind of going on Instagram, looking at comments. Jason Grubb, he always stands out to me right at the top of the comment section. Grateful for the official announcement. Now so many questions. Obviously, how many people are qualifying? Where are going to be the locations? What are the dates? But have any of you spoken with any adaptive or masters athletes thus far, or teens?
I have. I don't know if any of you guys have. So I can just give you I have a lot of very close friends in that community. One of my best friends is a games masters, and I've spoken to him really quickly about it today, and he gets it. He wants the opportunity to be able to be on that stage, and I think for him, maybe more of a fringe games athlete, it creates an immediate opportunity for him to have more purpose in his training. But there's some people that are upset, and I understand it. I think they just lack the explanation and information. I think social media is tough. I think Dave and the team did a really good job with trying to explain through that.
Mhm.
You'll hear more. It's hard. I mean, I've been always told you're explaining, you're losing. I think they very directly, said what they needed to say with this. And if you or anybody else thinks that they're trying to make pain and suffering for you as a master's adaptive or teen, or in turn the same for themselves, it's just a crazy thought. Like, they're really trying to make this work financially for you, as a business for themselves. It's a critical time. So this is just, I get the pain side for these people. I think it's just because they lack the info.
Mm.
I
Has
coach
anybody
a
else
few.
spoken?
I coach a few
Don't shake your head at me.
games level.
I was just stretching.
I coach.
Not you, both of
I
you.
was just stretching. Yeah.
I coach a few games level masters athletes, who would be in the mix. And the announcement just came out. I was going to reach out after this and have the opportunity to speak with them. I know, speaking obviously with them prior to this, because we had an idea this was coming. One was very encouraged about the opportunity and the thought of that this might happen, and the other was very opposed to it. So it's interesting to kind of see, you're going to have people on both sides of the spectrum, but I do think that there are a lot of questions that need to be answered. I personally think it creates an incredible opportunity. The games having only 10 athletes for masters and teens, in my opinion, was inappropriate, way too low. We'd seen historically when it was 20 that even, you have athletes that finished 17th or 18th in the qualifier to get there that would podium. And I think now it gives you the opportunity to do something similar to the games where you have 20, maybe even 30, maybe even 40 athletes. It's going to open up more opportunities. It's going to be more competitive. And in my opinion, I think it's more exciting for more athletes. I think ultimately we'll start to see, how do they qualify? I know they talked about that some of the stages will remain the same, which is great, because I love to see that it still means something in the CrossFit season. It's not like, oh, well, now you have your own separate qualifier, your own separate this, your own separate that. No, it's still, everyone is still there, a part of the community, which I think is cool. But having your own dedicated event with the opportunity of more spots opened up to more athletes, I think is actually more exciting. So I'm hoping that people will look at it that way, but I can certainly understand initially there being some trepidation there.
I just have a question. Like, maybe I'm just wrong here. Like, I just don't see another option. Like, I just, what has been occurring, in my opinion, is not sustainable. So if you're going to be frustrated by this change, like, what would you put forth as a better option? Because right now, what isn't sustainable is adaptive and masters and age group athletes having to, put out GoFundMes to get to the games. And what is sustainable is having a specific event where we could storytell, we could build up brands so these people can actually start earning some revenue potential. Because otherwise, if you're just going to be a part of the games, not only does that impact the individuals and how well we could actually express that on ESPN, which is ultimately the largest microphone, but also if there's only 10 of you and it's being overshadowed by the individuals, how are you ever going to storytell effectively when you're storytelling about the individuals? And how could you ever make something sustainable for the next decades to come? Because right now right now it's currently unsustainable. What would you put forward that would be better than what the option is they're representing?
Jason, real quick on that, guys. I don't think it's necessarily that. I don't think they're looking at it from that perspective. I think they're looking at it from it's the cachet of the CrossFit Games. Like, it's the name and the fact that, like, if you're CrossFit Games champ, like, that means something. Now you're going to be Legends champ, and it's not the same ring to it. And I think that just has to do with, it's history. It's what we've seen over the years. And I think that can change very quickly. So I think it's more about, just the prestige of it. Yeah, I think it's more the value and the prestige of it than it is looking at it from a business perspective. If that makes sense.
Do we know for sure that it won't be called the Legends CrossFit Games? Like, that the CrossFit Games will not be in the title?
I don't know.
No, we don't. But is that a reason to have a problem with change because of what you get to call yourself at the end of the year?
For some,
like, should we be focusing on that?
Well, and Chase, like, my question is, how many masters athletes do you think will continue to go?
All right, so I'm going to build off what Jason was talking about. We'll give you two scenarios, right?
Mhm.
Scenario one, everything we've been doing for the past 10 to 15 years in the CrossFit space. You're going to show up on 1 week of the year where the individuals and teams will be going on at the same time as the age groups. And now we have the adaptives as well as the teenagers. And all the focus and attention is going to be on the individuals. Some of the teams and the masters are going to run in conjunction with these other ones, and they'll never get seen. And you can only invite 10 in each division to go to the CrossFit Games. Or you split the season up, you give each age group and demographic, as far as adaptive and teens, their own dedicated competitions where you can span the field from 10 to 20, maybe even 30. You are nearly doubling the number of adaptive divisions that get to compete in their own competitive group, as well as do it in person instead of online. And each one could get their own dedicated broadcast and their own spectatorship and their own group, and they can grow their brands individually outside of the shadow of the CrossFit Games. Ask me which one has more potential to be better for everyone. As Jason said, one is just at dying on the vine. You're cannibalizing yourself in a season. It's been happening for years. We cannot dedicate the time, the effort, the money, the people, and the eyes to an adaptive division that deserves more than they've got. They've gotten a great opportunity to be a part of the games. Rosa said we may not do it right. They haven't done it right. They can do it better, and they're going to try to do it better. Their whole focus is to make the adaptive division 10 times better than it currently is. That is why this move is happening. Is it going to work? I don't know, but I'm going to sit there and back this idea. You're going to nearly double the divisions. You're going to add more people. Everyone gets to compete in person. That is a step in the right direction. I don't care if you don't get to call yourself a CrossFit Games athlete because I didn't do it while the individuals and teams were doing it. That is a poor reason to dislike this initial step to change. Or do I want to give the teenagers their own competition where we can expand the field? You saw the pit team throwdown by 100x per age group. 3-4 times in the divisions that we have in the Masters, and have their own dedication. And we don't even know what they're going to call it. But if you're going to ask me which one has a greater potential to be better for the entire ecosystem, including these athletes themselves, building their brands, coverage, sponsors, and a community celebratory event with more eyeballs, I'm going to take option B as far as a better opportunity to grow.
That's what you have to really look at this through. The lens you have to look it through is this clearly is an attempt for better. And I think that, there is a piece of our community that, is skeptical about decisions anybody makes. Forget about CrossFit. I mean, that's social media. It can be volatile at times, but I would say to that group, exactly what you're presenting is the perfect, objective way to measure this is, more access, but, ask yourself the question, because they're actually putting their money where their mouth is and supporting these events. I think it's, what do you think a CrossFit's objective is here? And it is for, an improved platform, a better presentation, and more access, which speaks to the ethos of our community, right? There's so many events that do this, these categories, and you see the response. I mean, I was a part of an event that is, was probably the largest Masters event in the world, Wadapalooza. So there is this opportunity, and these athletes are world class deeper than that, right? You guys are speaking to it. So yeah, I mean, the other side you're talking about too is like the why behind the games. You have to really reflect on that and be, again, objective about it. It's like broadcast dollars, equipment, load in, people, space. It's millions of dollars. And then the revenue opportunity would be the other side of that. And, it's not a massive revenue producer, in terms of people in seats and, sponsorship and broadcast eyeballs. There was a big, scuttlebutt about the lack of broadcast this year at the CrossFit Games. And, honestly, I understand the business side probably deeper, but, explaining that it's a big number, 7 figures to broadcast the Masters. Like, you can't do that. It's just, we want, like you guys, Chase is asking, a place for them to do this forever. And Jason's saying the same thing here. It's just, in order to do that, we have to start to evolve and look at things differently.
To me, on paper, It absolutely makes sense, and everybody's given really great, thoughtful, opinions on it. When we're looking at CrossFit, I think a lot of people get hung up with they want it to be how it used to. But the reality is that it's never going to be the CrossFit that we had back in 2016 and before, even 2018. We need to move forward. And I do see this as a step to do that. But with that being said, I think some of the hangups or questions that I have is what is the type of coverage going to look like, and how are we going to get people to the event? How are we going to get those ticket sales?
I have a question for, so I want to get, I just want to make a note on this. Like, think about also like how positive this is going to be for the individual CrossFit Games competition, just for a moment. Like, I don't think we're acknowledging that, because Lauren, you're bringing up a question about, what type of broadcast they're going to get, all that kind of stuff. If you could get the overall pie to get bigger, it'll then disseminate into all the other events as well. And I think something we're not drawing enough attention to is that by design, the CrossFit Games team is 1,000 people at the games or whatever. It's always spread thin because there's so much going on. If now that super talented team can be more focused on the games, just think about the production quality, the event quality, the think about the individual CrossFit Games and how much better it's going to get. I believe through that, they'll be able to focus more on storytelling, getting more sponsors, getting more eyes on it, broadcasting better, all of those things, which I then will also disseminate. So I guess the point I'm trying to make in a long-winded way is that let's not also forget that by making these decisions, it'll allow key leadership to focus more on a specific event that has the largest microphone, which will then disseminate down to other communities.
Just quickly on that, what you're saying is so spot on. Every event organizer needs to ask themselves how they best create an experience for four pillars, which are spectators, partners, volunteers, and athletes. And so this decision improves for all of them. That is how we measured decision making at Waza. Any event we were involved in, create a better experience for all the stakeholders. And those are the four key stakeholders at an event.
So I want to get back to getting butts and seats, but also from a broadcast perspective, I don't know that CrossFit is now going to pay for 3 additional broadcasts. I'm sure there's obviously going to be some kind of media plan, but one of the big questions I have, and I don't know who has info and who doesn't, so I don't want to catch anybody off guard, but those are some of the questions that I'm asking is how do we give coverage to these divisions to make it feel like their own CrossFit Games?
So at the games, for example, every competition floor that gets coverage is basically a dedicated team to do that. It's not the same team that covers the North Park traditionally that it does in the Coliseum. You basically have 2 separate broadcasting entities covering that. So when you take away, say, 2 fields of play and condense it to 1, you're already opening up an opportunity to have a second broadcast dedicated somewhere else because you're not doing it twice in the same place. That's usually how it goes. It's not that quite like basic, but what I see here is that now you have opportunities to, if it's not all happening at the same time, is provide a coverage in different spots at different times and really not basically like oversell yourself as far as getting coverage to each one.
Yeah, that broadcast question is a good one. I think, the answer is there are a lot of solutions for that. These events can be great if it's them that are doing it. I mean, many have proved that, they can be gritty and put out a pretty good product around that. I know broadcast is an expensive component of running an event operation. Just imagine what it is we answered that with what I said before. Imagine what it is to broadcast a CrossFit Games, teen, adaptive, and masters related at the CrossFit Games. So what Chase is saying is spot on. Fields of play are expensive, additional, I think these guys will do a good job. I mean, they've all run broadcasts. I think the one thing we're not talking about right here is that those organizations that are about to take control of these situations have all had success running their own events. So what are we worried about here?
And their own broadcasts.
Yes.
And listen,
And
they're
our
going to be
broadcasts.
growing pains. I mean, it's the
course.
first year. So people are going to have to be patient. I mean, it's not going to look necessarily like, like what the CrossFit Games has looked like as far as the individual division is concerned right off the bat. And I think obviously, you talk about the teens and the masters, et cetera. There's going to have to be some patience there. I mean, this is the first year that we're going to this format. So ultimately, I think that it has the potential to be a massive step in the right direction. But I think obviously there needs to be some room for patience, but I still think if I was an athlete, I would be incredibly excited about the opportunity that there are going to be more spots open for me to compete. Especially if I'm kind of one of those athletes that, when you're doing a qualifier have historically, finished 24th, 25th, 32nd, et cetera. You're now in the mix. I mean, and I think it's going to breed better competition. And I think that's more exciting for these divisions. I think it's a big step in the right direction, specifically on the athlete side. And then obviously on the business side for CrossFit.
Jason,
Do we
you
know
said
that?
one of the most important things here, which is, the space now to tell those stories isolated, right? They're more on a pedestal at that point. More storytelling opportunities, more that creates more eyeballs, right? You have, so many people that are concentrated on individuals. There's more people engaged. The trickle down's really incredible here. You guys are all saying, and it's just, those stories are blended into taking away from the fittest on earth, quest from the elite division or whatever we call it, and men's and women's divisions. And, it's getting sort of, drowned in that. And there's some incredible, awesome stories. And I think CrossFit even creates the space for themselves to contribute on a higher level with their channels at that point, storytelling. I mean, it's really.
One thing I just wanted to bring up is like, will they be called CrossFit Games athletes? I don't know. But what I do know is if you look at jiu-jitsu as an example, I'll just pull that because it's something I'm interested in, is that it's known there's like IBJJF World Championships, there's ADCC, and there's like 3 events. Like there's the Masters, IBJJF Worlds, Master Worlds. So that if you win Master Worlds, like you're legit. There's gonna be tons of other events throughout the year, right? But there's 3 solid ones that everybody knows. If you win those as a master, as a no-gi or a gi, if you win those 3, like you're the most legit in the world. And I think that same thing could apply here. I just think we have to reframe it in our mind from be like, oh, I'm a CrossFit Games athlete, to be like, dude, I won the wheel walk, or I am the winner of this. And I think it could be there. Or maybe they start incorporating it as a CrossFit Games, but who knows? But I think the storytelling thing is going to be 5 years from now. I think we're going to look back on this and you're going to see some adaptive athletes and maybe even masters athletes making enough money off CrossFit to potentially live off of. I think that has a potential to do that. Right now, I don't think you could say that for any of them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So
100% correct.
True.
So I think 5 years from now, in particular, like you'll see some adaptive athletes who start to brand build, who start to storytell, who start to get sponsorships because they have magnifying glass on them, and they could add value for the brands. Whereas I don't think right now you could say that.
There
Well, and
were
I don't disagree
athletes.
that this gives more storytelling opportunities. I think that this is the best way to tell deeper and better stories. My question really is just whether there's a budget to allow folks to do that.
What Jay's pointing towards opportunity for athletes to make a living. I think part of the issue here in some of these arguments will be that was a thing. So when Masters initially launched, there were some athletes that were able to capitalize on that financially, and I think that spoke to opportunistic behavior by brands as new things were launched, and everything CrossFit touched turned to gold at that point, right? And they're not for not trying. It's just something that they've learned is better served, on its own. But I think that immediately is a positive reset when it comes to that. It's athletes actually being highlighted. If you think about the reason that Masters athletes probably struggle today, that they're not getting maybe paid or made a living off of this, is it all comes down to views, eyeballs, impressions, and they're not getting them through this platform because they're not the focus. And that's a really great realization. How do we all grow together and create more opportunity. Jason, you're spot on that. That does create the possible opportunity for masters to actually earn off of their likeness at this point. They're going to have more eyes on them. I mean, it's a fact.
I also think that this hopefully opens up the possibility to be able to create a lot of those stories, for specifically for the individual division at the CrossFit Games. I mean, I was a huge fan of the Miles to Madison series. I think that was a massive hit this past year that we didn't have that. And I'm hoping that we'll get that, expanded even more, in the future. Obviously, I mean, we've talked, ad nauseum about, some of the ideas to grow the sport and, possibly like a Drive to Survive and, reality show and more stories and getting into camps and getting into this and getting into that. And, I think with this focus now that we're starting to see, I'm hoping that this is a step towards a lot of these things that we've been talking about. And, I think this is a massive step and a first step in really being able to start to, create some of those opportunities. And when we look at this, I think we need to look at it from all aspects, right? I mean, how does it affect the masters, the teens, the adaptive, but then also, where are the eyeballs really drawn? And if we're being honest about it, right, it's to the individual division of the elites at the CrossFit Games. I mean, that is ultimately where we're going to have the massive spectator base. And that's where we're going to go from being a niche sport to a household name. And how do we do that? And this is, I think, really important when you're talking about, a specific event. When you go to the Super Bowl, you're watching, the best of the best compete in a game, right? In one, and there's not 47 different divisions going on in this flag football team and this one and this one and that. No, we're focusing on, we're focusing on what we're focusing on, and that's where we're at now. And I think that's important.
There's a lot of star power in the Masters division that gets drowned. I mean, think about it. I mean, you've had a lot of big platforms convert out of the elite division to Masters, and it kind of is like a tree in the forest. Do you hear it? It's unfortunate, but there's so much else going on at the CrossFit Games and throughout the season that it just kind of gets drowned out a bit. I mean, those are, look at the initial generation of heroes in our sport are aging out right now, right? In a major way. There's a lot of 8 to 10 year games athletes, coming probably towards the end of their career. And you have million plus following platforms that are, able to tell stories through for themselves and for whatever they're participating in that will be more engaged through an isolated situation. Just think about the regular pool of athletes, guys like Pat Vellner, Brent Frykowski. I mean, they're not competing. They're probably talking about or watching or seeing some of their friends out there and contributing. It's just, I mean, you can get into the weeds on this thing and there's really not a lot of downside to this. I mean, I don't really see it.
Spectators, we haven't touched it. Chase, you stirring up there?
The more people you invite, the more friends and family come.
So true. That's true.
Lauren,
do we know that more are?
How do you?
To me, that's one of the big question marks: is how are we going to get spectators to come
and watch?
But I guess, Lauren, my question back to you would be like, what responsibility does the event have to draw in? Like the athletes also need to take ownership in drawing spectators, and the event needs to take ownership. Like, I don't really think CrossFit should message, CrossFit should help, but ultimately this event is responsible for getting butts in the seats and people to spectate. And the more we storytell, the more we get things going, the more people will come. And I just think this, there shouldn't be this sense of entitlement from the community to say, oh, there should be spectators. Well, okay, if there should be spectators, then go there, watch it, support it. Otherwise, it'll never grow to something more than what it is today. I think this idea that what's CrossFit going to do for them? It's like, well, what are they going to do for themselves to storytell, to brand build, to build up so they can get more spectators? I guess I look at it differently.
I got a question I'm going to take your seat here, Lauren. Excuse me.
That was part of the
Jared,
plan like 2 weeks ago.
Just no points. No points.
Justin,
Hosted by
the two, you need more gray in your beard, Chase. That would be positive. Justin and I can help you with that.
I just wanted you guys to remember the good old days.
That's husky. That's a husky beard. So you two are, Justin and I have been on the other end of tons of games athletes. So I think I can probably understand how we might answer this, but you are games athletes, the two of you. Does this make you more or less interested in competing at the Masters Games?
Jason, people are more interested in your answer than mine.
I mean, seriously though, two guys that could win or like be in the conversation of those divisions, you haven't. So what, are you more apt to say, oh, maybe this is an opportunity. I can still do my job at the games, because we all have these massive roles and other things going on at the games. I mean, is this something that interests you more?
I think that's a good perspective. I'll look at it in two ways. As an individual athlete, I look at this as a very good thing. Meaning, let's just not talk about age group. Individual. I look at this as I'm going to show up and I am the priority as an individual at the CrossFit Games. The team has no other responsibility than to make sure that our experience is phenomenal. The events are great, whatever. So if I'm an individual athlete looking at this right now, I'm stoked, because that's one thing. But if I am a Masters athlete, yeah, actually it does draw me. And I hadn't really thought about that until you brought it up. And I don't really see myself ever competing as a master. But I think it's because
commit.
Well, no. It's because
you want to grow the sport. You want to grow the Masters. Well, Come on, throw your hat in the ring, Jason.
The reason why the Masters never drew me was because I always looked at it as kind of like a thing that was going on the side, and not like it. It was hard for me to go from where I was at the games, like being like on the main floor, doing all that stuff, to then seeing like my, this demographic, the age group, like kind of not being celebrated the same way. But maybe that changes a little bit actually now that this is happening. So yeah, it would fire me up more, but I don't think it fires me up enough to go do it.
I think Matt made a great point before about we have legends of the sports, because you were talking about how do you get butts in the seats, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I think now it gives these specific events an incredible opportunity to market, some of the legends of the sport and some of the upcoming stars of the sport. And I think they'll be able to do a really good job, hopefully, of being able to market that. But ultimately, you're looking at competitions that are specifically going to be centered upon athletes who, are currently legends of the Masters, or who were legends that were individuals. And you're also, currently going to be able to go and see some of the best upcoming teens. And I think what's really cool about the teen division is, we've seen some of these teens, Emma Carey, Mal O'Brien, Olivia Kerstetter, et cetera. This now honestly gives them the opportunity, and I'm hoping that the rules will allow this, for them to do both, for them to be able to qualify possibly as an individual at the CrossFit Games, and then to be able to go and compete at their own teen dedicated competition, which I think would be incredibly exciting. And it would also draw a lot more eyes to these competitions. So, in the past, we've been limited in some of these things because you've had to make a decision. And now the opportunity is there for them to possibly be able to do both. And I hope that they allow that, because I think that would be huge for the sport.
As a coach, would you encourage your athlete to do that, Justin?
Oh, absolutely. I think that would be phenomenal. Well, because I think if it's dedicated competitions, you've got the opportunity to go and compete if you're good enough to compete against the big boys and girls, obviously. But then if you've got the opportunity to go and get more experience, and listen, there is no substitute for experience. And when you win, you have to learn how to win. Winning is something that you learn how to do. You look at some of our legends of the sport, right? They all can tell you a story about catastrophic seconds, right? Coming in second catastrophically in a few different scenarios. And they had to learn how to win. And I think the opportunity to go against your peers and still compete against great athletes where you have the opportunity to win, why not go ahead and do that also? I would 100% support that if I had a team that had the opportunity to do both.
Lauren, I had one more just take on this. I just think was something I wasn't thinking about. We're talking about getting butts in seats. What if you take the elite from the CrossFit Games and now they're out of season, perhaps, and they can show up at these events and be one with the event? So like these event coordinators can connect with the, Tia Toomey's, Tia or the whoever, right? And get them to come and support that event. And now they'll also draw in more people. So that's something that we didn't have before. Because yes, you have the CrossFit Games, but people are going there for the game. This could be a little bit more intimate, which I actually think for some people, they might look forward to more than going to the games where they know they're not going to really see the athletes. In this case, they're going to be able to see them if they announce early they're going to be there.
Well, and I do
brands
love that
can-
idea because, they could have
brands can
sponsorship
activate.
obligations, and I think
That's
that is
where
a great fix.
That's where the brands come in. I can see myself on the brand side activating at an event that I can activate around somebody that people want to come and visit or meet or talk about, right? So like that makes it easy, and I think there'll be a lot of that. The question to answer is, are more people going to train masters, teens, and adaptive now? The answer is yes, because more people have a chance to go to the games. So the answer is that's a win. I mean, in the end, all this other stuff is
for qualification is going to look like, or are we just all
No,
assuming that
but
because
you would
they're
have
not
to
going to
vote.
send 10 athletes?
it's definitely got to be more, right? I mean, come on.
It better
I mean,
be. It better be. Honestly, it's a massive
Yeah.
failure if they don't.
Everybody's opinions change.
I can
Heath with a mic
confidently-
drop, man.
I'm going to
That was
put
powerful.
my Lauren Kalil hat on for you guys because I
Here we
don't.
go.
Because I don't
Did you just like push your hair back while you did that?
Well, that was my wire.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
okay.
got to fix your hair.
Gotta go behind you, Justin, you amateur. All right. Is it better to have these events before the CrossFit Games or after the CrossFit Games?
That's a really good question.
Because you're talking about
from
telling
a
stories,
perspective.
using adaptive
After.
team and age groups stories to tell maybe at the CrossFit Games. You can't
I
do
think
that
after.
before.
I think after.
Yeah, you're blending into this the run up marketing of the CrossFit Games. If you're doing it before, because there's a lot of storytelling going around what's going to happen at the CrossFit Games. So best position from a marketing perspective would be after.
Yeah, I like after.
Okay. Any other final thoughts, comments, opinions based on the information we know thus far? Because I'm sure we'll talk about these things again on Death By as we.
I'm
Jason, if you need someone to coach you for the CrossFit Games, just let us know. Okay?
Yeah.
we can talk about it.
You know what? I just want to say, like, shout out to CrossFit for like making a decision and getting out there and doing this. I think CrossFit, obviously we all rode like a super great train for a long time, and some things, I think that CrossFit's on a really good path right now. I think that the fact that they're making these decisions is what's needed. And I think that sometimes the community forgets this is not a nonprofit. If it was a nonprofit, it'd be different. This is a for-profit business. And with that comes responsibility to not only shareholders, but also employees and growth of the overall community. And so I just want to give credit where credit's due to all the leadership for making the hard decisions, because CrossFit is a tough community to start making decisions in. They get very aggressive, right? We all know that. But I think that this is a good testament to, like, if the community really looks at it, I think it's going to be for the betterment. But most important, I'm glad CrossFit just made a decision and is rocking and rolling with it. So shout out to them for doing that, because I know that's probably not easy for them to do.
I can see where people are concerned, probably just because how things have gone since 2018. Change again. This is the biggest change we've had since we switched from regionals to sanctioned events, and then back, and then there's no. Being a part of this team, I would say we don't have a lot of like runway of be like, hey, trust us. Right. I get it, and so I think that's where you'll see a lot of maybe the negative reaction, because there hasn't been a lot of positive reaction over the last couple of years. I think this is a positive thing. I'll stand by it. And I'm a Homer hat to begin with. I'm wearing it, but like I'll stand by this decision and do everything I can to help this become a great thing for the age groups and the teenagers and the adaptive, and bring light to that situation, whatever that may be. I don't think I have a great, huge role in anything like that, but I'm going to be on the positive side of that. And if I fall flat on my face or CrossFit falls flat on their face trying to fall forward, like I'm going to give them, I'm giving them some grace to do that in this setting. Right? I think overall, this can be a great thing if people allow it to be. That's what I don't want to see. I don't want people fighting this because they don't like change or the way it used to be. I was like, do you have any idea how much the CrossFit Games lost 10 years ago? Mm-hmm. Like people are like, oh, it's got to be back to the old ways. The old way has been terrible for the business in general. And you know, you guys talked, this is my last thing I'll say. We talked about, it's like, okay, this is a business. Jason said it's not a nonprofit. We also want to increase the brand value of what CrossFit means in the fitness space and the competitive space. And if our brand value is overshadowing each other all at the CrossFit Games with Indy and team, and we're missing another half of what we could be broadcasting and branding upon, look at what our age group divisions do from 35 to 70 plus for the men and the women. Look at what we do, what our adaptive athletes do, true athletes in the space. Look at where they can go. And where do you do all of these things? You do them in CrossFit gyms. And that's the only place these things can happen. And so increasing the brand value of what CrossFit means outside of the competition by telling these stories, which can be our most influential stories on a worldwide community, giving them their own light to shine in and talk about that, I think is a great play and move for the CrossFit Games.
You have to, Jason, you're both saying this is, first of all, like, forget about the past. I get it. It's experience, but there's a new group of leadership. I'm a big fan of Don. He makes swift, hard decisions, thoughtful. And I know he's thought a lot about meeting things and people where they're at. And, you know, honestly, as a business operator, you always have to ask yourself that, you know, yes, we want to evolve and grow and create space for growth, but this is where things are at for sustainability. You all said this on the forefront of this, is that, you know, this was just a death march at a certain point here, that this thing was going to end, and that, you know, more loss or lack of success on the masters adaptive and team division front was just going to create a situation where they were going to put their hands up and say, we can't do this anymore, you know? So they're meeting more people where they're at, which is CrossFit. Like, we want to meet people that are overweight and have diabetes, all this stuff. This is meeting a group of people in a division where they are at right now, you know, and where this whole thing is at. But, you know, from a decision-making perspective, you know, backing up what Jason's saying is, like, you know, if you start to piece together some of the more recent decisions, we are going in the right direction. It's not going to be all roses and flowers, right? But hard decisions are being made for the better, and that is what is, you know, most visible to all of us now that have been involved for so long. Is, you know, there's more collaboration and there's more thought being put in, like, hey, how are we here 20 years from now? Like, that, like, has not always been something. Like, you talk about the spend on the games 10 years ago, that's not sustainable. Like, we have to grow the sport, the business, so that I can watch it, you can watch it 10, 15, 20 years from now. Like, these decisions are hard, but they're making the right ones. And, you know, those guys have done a good job.
I think the last thing I want to say is, and I tend to look at these things a little bit more from the athlete perspective. And for me, looking at it from an athlete perspective, I think that things just got better from an athlete perspective on all fronts. I think the masters, the teens, the adaptive are going to have an incredible amount of you know, better opportunities and more visibility because of this. I think we have now, you know, centered our focus more at the actual CrossFit Games on the elite and team division, you know, and I think obviously that puts an immense amount of focus and visibility on our stars of the sport, which I think is great. So when I look at this from an athlete perspective, I really don't see any negatives. I think it's an incredible positive from all perspectives. And I think the athletes should be excited today. And I think those that are are disappointed really need to take a step back and try to figure out why. Is it just because, oh, well, I'm not going to be called CrossFit Games champ? Well, you don't really know that, first of all. And second of all, you're going through all the stages against the people who are signing up for the Open, et cetera. Like it is ultimately going to be that. So I think the opportunity just got better for everyone. And I think that's important.
Mark, I just have one thing. I think that people who are watching this should look at this group. We don't agree on everything. All you have to do is watch episodes back, right? And
Yes.
but honestly, it's a diverse group. We all have different angles, things we've been involved in, and we're completely in lockstep on this. That's because we've been around a long time and seen it, and it's a really good data point for everybody. Not like, hey, trust me, and quiet. I mean, we're telling you all the good reasons that we've observed that make a lot of sense of this whole thing. So I think it's before we fire off, I think that's the point. From that community's perspective, ask some questions. People we can all answer them and tell you what we think, but give this thing a chance. And the second point is I just got a push notification that Underdog launched a teen adaptive and masters.
We already had them.
That's great.
We already had them, but thanks. Thank you for letting everybody know.
If Lauren was giving out points
have
at the time, this would have been you would have finally won, Matt.
I was thinking the same thing.
The one time you don't keep score.
Good job, buddy.
You make your best points.
Hey, you're a winner in my eyes, Maddie.
Thank you.
Matt,
Thank you.
you're a winner in all of our hearts today. Not by the point system, but
keep in mind Cutler has to wear glasses, so take that compliment for what it is.
It's just reading glasses, Jesus.
Well, Chase, Jason, Justin, Matt, thank you guys for having a nice roundtable discussion, talking about the most recent news. Sometimes you need one step back to take 2 steps forward. Lots of details still to come about, but I appreciate the conversation as always. Thank you to our sponsor, Thirdsy. Thank you to our contestants and our viewers, and we'll see you next time.